Welcome in, everyone. We're diving deep today, and a big shout out to all our listeners tuning in from English with Rose. It's awesome to have you all here.
Glad to be here.
So, today's topic, well, it's a pretty big one. Climate change.
Yeah, no small talk here, right?
Not exactly. But we've got some great info lined up to really break it all down. What does climate change actually mean? What's causing it? And what can we possibly do about it? We're going to cover it all. And for our English learners out there, we're going to highlight some super useful phrases along the way.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, the goal is to make this complex topic clear and hopefully pretty interesting too. So let's get started, shall we? First things first. What exactly is climate change?
Right. So our notes here say that climate change is basically big long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Yeah, it's not just about today being hotter than yesterday.
Right. It's bigger than that.
Exactly. It's about these changes happening over many, many years. And the thing is, while Earth's climate has changed naturally before, what we're seeing now is happening way, way faster.
And the notes say humans are the main reason for that, right?
Pretty much. Since the 1800s, and even more so in recent decades, human activities have been the main driver of this rapid change.
Okay, so human activities, like what? What's the biggest culprit here?
Well, according to the sources we have, the main driver is burning fossil fuels.
Okay, fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas.
Exactly. Those are the big ones. We burn them to power, well, pretty much everything. Our homes, cars, factories, you name it.
And what's the problem with that?
So here's the thing. When we burn these fossil fuels, we release a lot of carbon dioxide, CO2, into the air. Now, CO2 isn't all bad. It's actually a natural part of our atmosphere.
Hey.
Yeah, it helps regulate Earth's temperature. But the problem is, we're pumping out way too much of it.
Too much of a good thing can be bad, right?
Exactly. Think of it like this. The Earth's atmosphere is kind of like a greenhouse, right? It lets sunlight in to warm the planet. And greenhouse gases like CO2 trap some of that heat, so it doesn't all escape back into space.
That makes sense. Kind of like a blanket keeping the Earth warm.
That's a good way to put it, and that's actually a good thing. This natural greenhouse effect is what keeps our planet habitable.
So what's the problem then, if it's a natural process?
The problem is when we burn so much fossil fuel, it's like we're adding extra layers to that blanket, to that greenhouse. Too much CO2 means too much heat gets trapped, and that causes the Earth's temperature to rise.
I see. So it's throwing things out of balance.
Exactly. And that's where all these problems start to pop up, as our notes say.
Problems seems like an understatement, honestly, given everything we hear about climate change.
Yeah, I'd say so. So what are some of the things that a hotter Earth actually leads to? Well, one of the most obvious and pretty scary ones is melting glaciers.
Huge ice formations we see in pictures, right?
Those are the ones. And those glaciers, they're melting at a pretty alarming rate.
And where does all that melted ice go?
Straight into the oceans, which makes sea levels rise. And, higher sea levels, they're not just about beaches getting smaller.
Right. It's way more serious than that.
Definitely. Think about all the coastal cities around the world, all the people living near the ocean. Higher sea levels put them at a huge risk of flooding.
That's a lot of people, millions and millions.
Exactly. And then on top of rising sea levels, there's this whole thing about extreme weather events becoming more frequent and more intense.
Like hurricanes, right?
Yeah, hurricanes, droughts, heat waves, all those things. See, a warmer atmosphere holds more energy and moisture, so those storms have more fuel to work with.
So basically everything gets more extreme.
Pretty much. Stronger winds, heavier rainfall, longer droughts, hotter heat waves, all that fun stuff.
It sounds pretty bleak, to be honest. And it's not just humans that are affected, right? Our notes mention the impact on animals and plants, too.
Absolutely. It's a huge problem for biodiversity. When the climate changes this rapidly, many species just can't keep up. They're adapted to specific environments, and when those environments change too quickly, they can't find food or shelter.
I see. It's like their home is disappearing.
Yeah, and that can lead to entire populations shrinking, or even worse, going extinct. It really throws the whole ecosystem out of whack.
It's pretty overwhelming to think about all this, to be honest.
I get it. It's a lot. But, it's not all doom and gloom. Our sources do talk about some things we can actually do about it.
Okay, that's good to hear. So what can we do?
Well, a lot, actually. Even small changes in our daily lives can make a difference.
Like what kind of changes?
Well, using less energy is a big one. Turning off lights when you leave a room, using energy-efficient appliances, things like that.
Okay, those seem manageable. What else?
Transportation is another big area. Driving less, maybe taking public transport more often, walking, cycling. Those things can really help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels.
Right, because cars use a lot of gas.
Exactly. And, even something like eating less meat can make a surprising difference.
Really? How so?
Well, raising livestock actually takes a lot of resources and produces a lot of greenhouse gases. So reducing your meat consumption, even just a little, can have a pretty significant impact.
Huh, I never thought of it like that. What about those renewable energy sources we hear about?
Oh, those are huge. Things like solar power and wind power.
Yeah.
They've gotten so much better in recent years, and they're a really important part of the solution.
Because they don't produce those harmful greenhouse gases, right?
Right. They provide clean energy without all those emissions.
Yeah.
And, another thing that can make a difference is reducing waste and recycling more.
Makes sense. The less we throw away, the fewer resources we need to use in the first place.
Exactly. It all adds up. And speaking of things that add up, we should talk about planting more trees.
Oh, yeah. Trees are good for the environment, right?
They are. They absorb carbon dioxide from the air and release oxygen, like they're cleaning the air for us.
Wow, so planting more trees can actually help fight climate change.
It can. It's not a complete solution on its own, but it's a really important part of the puzzle.
I'm starting to feel a little bit more hopeful now, knowing there are things we can do.
Me too. And you know what else is important? Spreading awareness. The more people understand about climate change, the more likely they are to take action.
That's a good point. Knowledge is power, as they say.
It really is. And that brings us to something really cool for all our English learners out there, especially those getting ready for tests like IELTS.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about some useful phrases we can use when talking about climate change.
Awesome. So the first one is refers to. It's super useful for explaining what something means. Like, climate change refers to those long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns.
Nice and clear. What about leads to?
Oh, that one's great for showing cause and effect, like
Or,
burning fossil fuels leads to an increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. See?
Yeah.
It connects those two things directly.
it's like a domino effect. One thing leads to another. Okay, what about puts at risk?
That one's all about danger, potential harm, like rising sea levels put coastal communities at risk of flooding.
Yeah, that's a serious one. And have a big impact.
That's about emphasizing the importance of something. For example, reducing our energy consumption can have a big impact on slowing down climate change.
I like that one. It shows that our actions can really make a difference.
They can. And the last one, take action. That's a call to, do something. Like, we need to take action now to protect our planet for future generations.
Yes, it's about making a change. Those are all really helpful phrases, and they pop up all the time when we talk about these things. And, there are so many other important words related to climate change that are good to know.
Right, like fossil fuels, carbon dioxide, glaciers, sea levels, extreme weather, air. Oh, and don't forget about hurricanes, droughts, and heat waves.
Those are important ones, too. And then there's habitats, extinct, renewable energy like solar power and wind power.
And of course, pollution, absorb, release, awareness.
Phew, that's quite a list. But it's really important to learn these words because they help us understand and talk about this whole climate change issue.
Absolutely. The more words you know, the better equipped you are to understand articles, discussions, podcasts like this one, and even to express your own opinions. Especially if you're preparing for an exam like IELTS, this vocabulary is super valuable.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's quickly recap the key points we've covered today.
Sounds good.
Climate change, it's basically long-term shifts in our planet's temperatures and weather patterns. And unfortunately, human activities, especially burning fossil fuels, are the main drivers of these changes.
Right. And these changes are causing all sorts of problems, like melting glaciers, rising sea levels, and more extreme weather events.
It's affecting everything, from coastal cities to entire ecosystems and animal species.
Yeah, the impact is huge. But the good news is we can do things to slow it down.
Exactly. Like using less energy, driving less, choosing renewable energy sources, reducing waste, and planting more trees.
And don't forget about spreading awareness. The more people who understand the problem, the more likely we are to find solutions together.
Totally agree. And for our English learners, mastering the key phrases and vocabulary we discussed today will give you the tools to really engage with this important topic.
Definitely. Being able to understand and talk about climate change in English is a valuable skill to have, no matter where you are in the world.
All right, so before we go, here's something to think about. What's one small change you can make in your own life to be a little kinder to the environment?
Yeah, or maybe there's something you heard today that sparked your interest. Maybe you want to learn more about a specific aspect of climate change.
It's all about learning, taking action, and spreading the word.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into climate change.
It was a pleasure.
And until next time, stay curious and keep learning.